Hey guys, and welcome to another Let's Draw. Today I'm drawing Dr.Naomi from No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle. And if you didn't read the title, then congrats, I just told you what it was. This one is gonna be more of like a This one is gonna be more explanatory, is how you say that, right? Of how I do things. I'm not very good at explaining, but I'm going to try my best. And, that's all that counts, right? Right. So, right now, just like every other Let's Draw or every other drawing video out there, you gotta start with the line art. Good line art means either a good base picture or a bad base picture. The line art is pretty much everything when it comes to getting the form and everything of the character down. If you don't have a good line art, then the small details kind of get lost, like creases on clothing, small like bits of strand of hair like this that I'm doing. And for this, I'm trying to get her little poof on her hair right, and I decided to just go with something simple instead of making it all crazy and flared out in the back. When I add that tiny bit of that tiny bit of like extra darkness or like extra lines in between, the corner of one line and another, I'm doing that to add depth to the line. It's what manga artists use a lot in their art, to add more depth to the corners of their lines so that they look more cohesive and they look more in line with another, and it looks more like they're overlapping instead of just two perpendicular lines just slamming into each other. But yeah, and for me, I like to use like either a thin or a thick brush for certain things. And if you saw that like weird glitch of like that bunch of thick lines popping up all suddenly, that was a problem on my part. Something on my computer lagged a bit, and my tablet just went nuts. But back to like the game and everything, or not the game. I've been watching too many Let's Plays. Back to the drawing. When I like to use like either a thick or a thin line, I tend to flip flop a lot depending on what I want. But I always use a highest stability brush, like this manga pen, or not manga pen, mapping pen. I just made a pen tool specifically for line art that I can easily use. It's good for doing lines and then erasing them, and then going back over and fixing it and making it look like a cohesive line. It's very good for that. You can use thin or thick lines, doesn't matter in your art. If you want to use thick lines, make sure you have lots of line variation, so it doesn't look too samey. It doesn't look very blocky. Or if you feel like line variation isn't really your thing, you can always do what people like Chamba do, where they have either very thin or thick lines in an image, and they're all very same. They're all very same width. It doesn't really change too much of the image. It just changes how the line art, the edges of the image look. And here you see I try to make it more like a shirt, stretching over her breasts, but I figured that since it kind of conforms to her breasts anyway in the original concept art, that just might as well make it conform to her breasts anyway. It makes it look better, and I'm not about that life of struggling with making things look natural. I've never been able to do that, but you can if you want. And that crease in boobs, never do that unless the breasts um are being pressed together like they are here. They're being like essentially crushed under her what's it called, under her blouse or corset, pretty much. I think it's more like a bustier, but I could be wrong. And as you can see, like, her breasts hang down very, very low on her body. That's because she has very large boobies. I can say boobies, right? It's the internet, right? She has very, very large breasts, and uh, that gravity works in very strange ways, and normally breasts hang down a little bit lower than normally, and they're a little bit off kilter because they're not exact. So gravity works with them to help them sag a little bit, and if she's not wearing a bra, they're gonna sag even more, which makes sense. And here I'm just doing the glove, and I'm adding that like extra line going all the way down the glove because that's just the extra part of like the seam. It makes it look nice. And I'm not good at hands. I've never been good at hands. I tend to bullshit my way through hands a lot by doing stuff like this, where I make them all anime and bendy and spindly, and it looks good, but it's not realistic at all. It's not realistic at all, but I like to put gloves on my characters because I don't like drawing actual fingers. Drawing actual fingers is hard. But you can do whatever you want with your drawings. I've been trying to draw more hands recently that aren't in gloves, and I just did this as a quick thing. Like, I want to draw this character. I've been meaning to draw this character for a while, and one thing led to another, and I just decided to draw her. She's pretty cool. I like this character. But as you can see here, I'm just going over and I erased lines, and I'm putting other things in the space of that line. That's just like a little zipper area for her glove, or like latch area, so that, or like another kind of like thicker seam. I don't know exactly what that is, but it's part of the glove, so I'm putting it there. And you might notice me doing a lot of creases. That's because as a kid, I didn't put creases in my clothing, and everything looked super flat. And then I got told by my art teacher to put creases in things, and I did, and it looked good, and I didn't want to. And then I started doing it more and more in like recent work, not recent work, but work in high school, just trying to get better at art, and I realized that, oh, excuse me, I drank a lot of coffee today. It's putting creases helps with the realism of it, or just helps with the small details, makes it look more natural. Clothes aren't always flat; they're really wrinkly and messed up half the time. Yeah, you know, like that shirt in your closet you haven't worn for 2 months. Here I'm just taking away the line art, or not the line art, the sketch layer, where I can see, so I can see just the line art to make sure that the line art looks fine. There's not any part that's sticking out glaringly like it's a bad part of the image or anything. Do that occasionally. Just take away the sketch layer so that you can just look purely at the line art. Because if the line art's good, the rest of the image is going to be good. I do it again here, and I'm checking the image to see how her hair actually works, how spindly it is, or how flared out it is at certain areas. I added one more little thing, and I go back and I add more of these creases and just little tiny things here. And now it's time to work on this corset, or bustier, or whatever it's called. This is going to take some time, but it's really, really simple if you know how to do it. Uh, for doing stuff like bustiers and all that, like shoelaces, bustiers, uh, yeah, sorry about that. Uh, muted the mic so I could burp. I drank a lot of coffee today. But yeah, what was I on about the bustier thing? I just drew the what are they called? The little drawstring part of it that keeps it all held together. And now I'm just going in with a straight line like tool. I'm just doing straight lines across in a zigzag like diamond pattern because I don't want to struggle with drawing those lines by hand because I don't have the most stable of hands. In this, I drew the diamond pattern on a second layer, and I just put it under. And now I'm selecting all of these, going back to the crisscross pattern, and I just control deleted all the stuff that was inside the selection. Now I'm going back and adding the missing parts of that and doing the same exact thing, missing parts of the ribbon, and just doing the same exact thing, so that I can have the crisscross pattern on the bottom part, but not get any problems with the ribbon part. And now here I'm gonna start on the face now. That's probably a good idea. Like, I honestly, going back to it, I really like the first nose I did, but I felt it was a little bit too Dragon Ball Z-esque. And look at that. That is an amazing mouth from the start. I never do that. I had to take a minute to sit right there and think about how I became the prince of drawing mouths on anime girls. Yeah. But no, mouths are very difficult. You can do many different ways. One thing you never want to do is just draw straight lines for lips, because that will always look bad, no matter what. And people try that all the time. Some people make it look good, some people don't. It just depends on your style. It doesn't work for my style at all. If there's too many lines, it makes me go insane. But like cross-hatching and stuff is fine. And here, just going for the eyes, I'm just erasing and making them look as close to the original eyes as possible. And instead of doing like solid blocks for most of it, I'm doing just straight lines for the eye, so that it can look as close to the original eye as possible. And eyelashes aren't always the same, so they're gonna have a little spindliness. It's also a little trick I learned from like hentai and doge and mangas, because they do that technique a lot, and a lot from official mangas as well. And then I noticed the eyes are a little bit off, so I take the eye and the eyebrow both, and I move it over to the right, because I can. Yeah, all I did for there was I just used like just a lasso selection, and I just selected the entire thing, and just Control T and just slid it over. Here, just adding the pupil. I never add the pupil, but sometimes it looks good. It depends on what kind of character you're drawing. And another thing I usually add is the crease on top of the eye. Some people have a crease in their eye, some people don't. It just depends on the ethnicity you are. I know I do, because I've looked in the mirror tons, and plus I never get any sleep, because I do things like this where I'm recording a video before I go to bed. It's probably not a good idea. Probably gonna dream about weird art stuff. But yeah, it depends on the ethnicity. Some people do, some people don't. It's whatever. And for here, I just gave up on the glasses, trying to do them like fancy, and I just drew them as lines because they're already black, and you want to make them look as straight as possible, because goggles or glasses are pretty straight. They don't bend a whole lot, but they do bend when you put them on your. They don't bend a whole lot on the glasses part, but near the middle part and the glasses themselves, they probably bend. And what I did there was I don't know if I can still see it. I can't, but I added some white accent to emphasize where the bridge of the glasses were. And what I did there was very, very fast. What I essentially did was I took a selection tool and I selected the areas around it, and around the line art, and I inverted the selection and just filled in the entire area with a halftone gray, or maybe a darker gray, maybe a blue, maybe a red if you want. But I use a gray because it helps me get good values when I do shading. So I just selected the entire outside of the image, inverted the selection, filled it with a gray, and then there's a part on the arm that was missing, so I just finished up the line art and filled in that part and fixed all the little areas. Or you could do this with essentially with a with layer masks if you want, which I still don't know how to use. They tend to take up a little bit more processing power than just doing a straight raster layer. But it depends on your computer, obviously. Layer masks are really cool. They allow you to do a lot of cool things without messing up another part of the image. And they allow you to use the layers previously and just use the selection of that layer, or the outside selection of the layer. And now here I'm just color picking the skin tone and all the colors, and I'm going in and doing the flat color of this. I was originally going to start out doing the line art, but sometimes I like to add the color first. It gives me a better sense on where or how I should place the lighting. But I will go back to the gray tone, don't worry. The gray tone's going to be there. It's not going anywhere, really. And Dr.Naomi was a very pale woman. And as you notice there, it took away the skin layer, because when you're drawing white, or any kind of variant of white on her light color, pastel maybe, on top of a light color like a Caucasian woman's color, or like a lighter Asian color, like a Japanese color, skin color, it tends to be really hard to see where the eyes are. So I just use a shade darker of a white, like, I don't know, like a 90% white. So it's not completely white, but it's still white. And I take away the skin tone and I put all the white. And when you use a white color that's not completely white, it's easier to shade, and you don't have to do some crazy things with it. And then I just filled in her eyes by color picking the color from her eyes, very specific spot, and I just paint bucketed it in and drew it in. I really should stop drinking so much coffee before I do these. It gets really annoying. I use a lot of paint bucket tools. I set up mine specifically to fill in my lines to the maximum that they can. Sometimes it doesn't work because that's how paint bucket tools are. Sometimes I select the areas that I want and I paint bucket all of them, or just control. On my computer it's Control G. I don't know what it is to other people for just the autofill shortcut. Going back in here and just refilling all the empty areas where there's supposed to be hair color, but I just can't get into it with a paintbrush. Also, I took away I put all the line art. I put all the line art, even the face line art, to half. just 50% opacity. It's usually a slider somewhere on your layer, or your layer uh, options. And after putting that down, I can see what parts of the color inside the liner is missing. And this is just real easy to do glasses. All you need to do is just take a color, white, black, red, whatever, put it inside where you want the glass or the plastic of the glasses or goggles to be, and then just lower the opacity. Just lower the opacity. And they're coloring some of these little area spots with this lasso tool. It's very handy. And when I colored her hair, I used a one shade lighter lighter black. And for her coat, I'm using just a color picked, what's it called? A color picked color from her jacket, or from her outfit, so that I'm getting the proper black for her outfit. Same with the gloves she's using, goggles, lips. I also color picked her lips so that I would get the proper color. On mine, it's just middle click or right click, I think. On your system, it might be something different. You might have it set to Alt for all I know. And yeah, this whole flat color area is just me color picking colors from specific areas and putting it into the thing. Since there isn't really a whole lot of shading in the concept art, I can freely just pick colors and know that I'm going to get the correct color. And now that almost all of the not soft shading, all of the flat color is done, I know what she looks like now. Can make sure that there's no like missing parts. And I'm going to start on the shading. Sometimes what people like to do for flat color, though, going back to that for a quick second, is they like to select an area and then expand it by a single pixel, and then just Control G or whatever, just autofill it in with, or just shortcut fill it in by just using a keyboard shortcut, and then it just fills in that entire area. Or they use a paint bucket tool, and that works just fine as well. I don't do that because it takes time. It's very annoying. And sometimes on certain programs like Manga Studio or whatever, you can't see the layer you've selected with a color. You can if you're using a layer mask, though, which is neat. And here I'm just getting fancy with the goggles shading, or the glasses shading, where I'm using kind of like a soft brush and then erasing it as I go. And I'm using a halftone gray on, I think that's Subtract. Yeah, it's Subtract. I change that over the course of this every now and again, because I can never figure out how I want to shade my fucking image. Oh, missed some more coat there. But for shading, quick tip. There's always shadow underneath the neck. It depends on where the light is, though. I made it blur out there because I like that. I don't know, I just like doing weird stuff like that. And for shading hair, go nuts. You can do whatever you want with shading hair. Just make sure that you have a light source coming from somewhere. Always choose a light source or two light sources coming from two different directions. I usually choose like top left, top right, bottom top, or bottom left. It depends on just how the character's facing and the image that I want to put. Because if you don't have good if you don't have good shading, then the 3D aspect of it, I guess you could call it, won't work that well. It will make it look like the image is too blocky. like I said, it'll make the image look a little bit too blocky uh, or chunky, depending. But you can always remedy that by using like multiple light sources or whatever. And you can see here, I'm not selecting the base layer, which is what I usually do. You can just select the base layer by, in most art programs, it's hold control, and then if you have a Wacom pen or whatever, it's just tap the thumbnail of the image, or it's left click the image if you're using a mouse. So yeah, just control and left click the thumbnail and it will select that entire colored area, which is very handy because it means that when you do that, you're not going to select anything that you don't want to select. In here I'm just drawing stuff and then erasing and then drawing back over it because I'm insane. And I'm just using a simple mapping pen here and just erasing areas that I don't need. Making sure areas of the image look concise. I mess up a few places here and there, but it's fine. Personally, I think if you mess up in an image, it just makes the image more interesting. Having perfect art isn't the end-all be-all of being an artist. If you're trying to be professional, sure, you might want to strive to be perfect, but you're not Art Germ, but you can be Art Germ. He's a pretty good artist. I mean, he worked really hard to get where he is. And I just heard something in my room. I think something fell, and that was really scary. I think I'm being haunted. But, back to art. If you want to strive to be a perfectionist, that's cool. But, personally, I think if you have mistakes in your art, it makes it look a little bit more interesting, to where it's like, this person is not a professional, but they're making the image look as flashy as possible. And that's what I like. I also like to look at like younger artists who aren't all that great, who are just starting out. And it's like, if you're just starting out as an artist, or you think you want to be an artist, or like a mangaka, person who draws manga, or you want to be a comic artist, your main thing is people that you want to start drawing, so get good at that. I'm not good at drawing people at all, actually. Also, make sure you figure out what you like to draw. A lot of people struggle with that, even I struggle with that, where some days I just don't know what I want to draw. And I think I've already said enough about shading. Just make sure you have a consistent light source, and make sure you don't have light coming from all sorts of directions, unless you're in like an arena, and that makes sense, because does make sense. I'm not saying you don't need to do that, but if you want to make dramatic lighting, sure, go right ahead, go crazy. But if you're trying to have like a thematic lighting, where it's like coming from only one side, or if there's like a light source like a flame or something nearby, like a torch, make sure you have the light from the torch shining on the character, maybe on a soft light layer, overlay layer, maybe an add glow layer at a lower opacity, which is what I usually like to do. And for here, I just selected the areas of the hair that I wanted to draw in, and I just used a soft brush. Like it's called Paint and Apply on Manga Studio 5, but I don't know what it might be on Photoshop, just a standard like soft square brush, or just soft round brush, watercolor maybe for that. And here I'm trying to figure out how I should draw this, how I should shade the hair, and I decided to go a little bit crazy, but a little bit simple. I'm not drawing individual hair strands, and just making the shading of it stylistic so that it makes sense. making sure that everything's connected, because once you put the color in, it can leak out and it's really hard to find the hole. That's what she said. Uh, Shading hair is kind of fun, but it's very, very tedious, because there's a lot of little details and things that you can do to just really make it look unique. I know Slugbox really likes to go crazy or simple shading hair. I'm dropping a lot of other artist names now, but if you're a person on the internet, then you know you've probably seen a lot of these artists around, maybe. And I love watching a lot of art. I pay attention. I learn things. Here I'm actually just using like this hard eraser with a soft edge, and I'm just erasing these to make them look a little bit more natural, more like they have light hitting them naturally. I go back and add some more here and there, and I go and I fix a lot of the line art. And here I'm gonna mess around with line art settings, like the color and the actual layer setting, whether it's like overlay or hard light or subtract. And I think I settled with this blue, but I'm not actually sure. I can't remember. And I'm going back to the original art to see how they did the shading on there, whether it's very conformed to like realistic shading, or if it's shading that is very stylized. And it's very stylized. I realized in that it doesn't really matter. You can make the clothing as dark as you possibly can, and I don't know when I finally pick the right thing, but this is what you have to do if you wanna like expand as an artist, is just mess around with settings. Try not to take it too seriously, because essentially you're just drawing pixels on a screen, or you're rubbing graphite or paint onto a canvas or paper. Don't take it too seriously, just have fun with it. And what I did here was, if you look closely, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but when drawing, when I figured out the line art that I wanted to use, all I did was go up into filter. There's a filter option in Mongo 5. I went up to the filter and I hit Gaussian blur, and I just blurred it at like 4 or 6 pixels and left it there. It makes the edges of the line art look, or the shading, look really nice. And here I'm adding the lighting. And before I was using a blue, and I just, because I wanted to use a blue, I like blue lights. They look kind of cool. But now I'm going in with a light yellow. It's not white, it's yellow, but it's almost white. So it's more natural than just using straight white light, which is what modeling companies use. And you might see me go crazy with the lighting on the edges here. I like to do that. I'm sorry, I know that's an improper way to do art. I'm using the paint and apply brush here, but it's taking forever, so I switch over soon to a dense watercolor brush. And see, it's not perfectly white, it's a little bit yellow, kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a banana yellow, I would say, but like the inside of the banana, where the potassium is. And here I'm adding some more light to it, just softer areas, and blurring it and erasing. Add some light down underneath the breast, because there is light down there. Add light to the individual parts of that and erase, so it is a little bit less opaque. That happens sometimes. You occasionally pick up your line art. But using light, like any color, any kind of, putting light onto any kind of picture is a very interesting process because you can't go too crazy with it, or else it'll look bad. And you can't go too hard, soft with it, or else there's not going to be enough light. So you have to figure out a balance that's right for you. Some people like very shiny art. Some people hate shiny art. I personally love, if you pay attention to the internet and pay attention to creepy men on a farm drawing creepy pictures of anime girls, you'll know Plague of Gripes. And I learned a lot from him watching his videos. And one of the thing is don't go too crazy with the light, but just find a balance for yourself. Because he has very shiny art, but that's because his art is all color picked and color matched. There's a lot of contrast that works, and it's very interesting. And here I did something crazy. I just selected the shadow area, and I just color picked an area, or just not color picked, filled in the area, and then selected the entire image, blurred all of that ever so slightly with Gaussian blur. Then I reselected the area, and then deleted the stuff that wasn't blurred. And I'm adding a little bit more light here, a little bit more just ambient light, extra light. And if you have gradients in your disposal, I suggest you use them. Use them sparingly though, or use them with, don't use them crazily because they can ruin an image. But essentially just use them for like regular lighting, because that's what they're there for. I use a foreground to transparent gradient most of the time that goes from really dark to really light, to the end of the image to essentially nothing. It's transparent. And I use that for soft lighting to give the character a little bit more, make it a little bit more brighter, or to put it at the bottom to make it darker. Now, there I duplicated the line art before, and I was trying to see if I could do something fancy with it, like I did before with a bad girl picture from Dr.Naomi Heroes 2. But then I decided, you know what, why not? I'm just gonna fucking put her name next to her, because that's simple, and I don't want to be complicated with this image. I didn't really think that far ahead. I just wanted to draw her. Just put her name, made it vertical for her name, and I put it in a light gold color. I guess you could call it bronze. And I duplicated the what's it called, the text layer that just has the text that I can edit, and then I rasterized one of them, selected that layer, expanded by 4 pixels, and then I filled in a layer, made a new layer, filled it underneath so that it would make a line thing, and I just did that again with another different color to make it look like the lines now. And this is almost over. I just actually need to add my little signature thing that I made. I tried forever to find a good place to put this, and I think I just settled with putting it right next to her somewhere. I think right there. Yes, right there. And that's gonna be the end of this picture. I'm gonna go post this later on to some other sites and stuff when I'm done.